Welcome to the Well Seasoned Librarian Podcast. This is Season 11, Episode 15. I'm your host, Dean Jones. I'm sure you're all wondering why I've called you here today. Someone in this room is a murderer. Okay, well, that's not true, but it's fun to think about. Today I'm talking with someone who has thoroughly immersed herself in the mystery novels of Agatha Christie and has written a wonderful companion in the form of a cookbook that is inspired by the works of this very author. Karen Pierce is a self-confessed foodie, amateur cook, and avid reader of Agatha Christie's work. At the age of 12, she picked up a Christie pocketbook from her grandmother's bedside table. It was The Third Girl, a book that is a glorious romp with London in the 60s. She was hooked. I'm going to now take you to my conversation with author Karen Pierce to talk about her new cookbook, Recipes for Murder, out this week. There'll be links available in the bio where you can purchase it. Welcome to the Well Seasoned Librarian Podcast. I'm your host, Dean Jones. Today I'm speaking with author Karen Pierce, a detective fiction devotee, food lover, and Agatha Christie superfan. Karen has attended and volunteered at several Anthony Boucher Memorial Word Mystery Conventions and has taken pilgrimages to Torquay and Greenway House, Christie's hometown and home. Pierce lives in Toronto, Canada. Karen, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
For our audience members who may not be familiar with you, can you tell us where you grew up and where you live now?
I grew up in Toronto and I live in Toronto. So I actually grew up on the west side of the city and now I live on the east side of the city. But yeah, I've been here for many years. I've had a few, a couple little moves around, but for the most part, I'm a Toronto girl.
Did you have anybody early on that instilled in you a love of food, like a relative, a grandparent, parent?
Yes, I am from a family of people who love food. My mother's a great cook. My father loved great food. My grandmother was a good cook. My other grandparents adored good food. So there was always quality food at every family dinner. So yeah, I grew up knowing about good food and mediocre food. So yeah, I've always been a bit of a foodie.
What is your background in recipes and cooking?
Just that, that I liked food and liked to cook. And so I'm a home cook. I certainly developed recipes. I've never followed a recipe twice the same in my life. But yeah, no, just cooking for family and friends for the past, 30 or 40 years or more.
Now, the big question that I've had that I think everybody wants to know is, where did Agatha Christie come into your life, and where did you become a devotee of Agatha Christie?
Well, March break as a kid, sent off to the grandparents, and I found a copy of Third Girl, which is Agatha Christie's 1965 novel, and I read it vociferously. I just consumed it, and it was so exciting because it was set in London in the swinging 60s, and I think that's why I originally consumed the book. But after that, I just started reading all of them and got really hooked on the puzzle mystery, really hooked on mysteries in general, and have been reading ever since. In my 20s, I started collecting them, and I still have an ample collection of them today. And I reread them. They're comfort, like most of the food in the book. This is comfort reading for me.
Do you have a favorite of her works?
Now, I don't think I actually have a favorite. That's depends on the mood, my time of life, whatever. But I have thought about my top 5. So my top 5 are Death on the Nile, Sad Cypress, Peril at End House, The Man in the Brown Suit, and The Hollow.
Nice.
So other than Death on the Nile, most of those are probably unknown to your listeners, but I would encourage them, read a Christie. Don't just go for the movies. Read a Christie. Read all sorts of. There's 66 of them. There's one for everybody.
You bring up something interesting for me. I, like a lot of people, am familiar largely with Christie's work through the television shows and movies. Do you personally have any actors that were your favorites playing some of the characters?
Well, I mean, I don't think anybody beats David Suchet as
Yeah.
Hercule Poirot. Yeah, just brilliant. I like the original Tommy and Tuppence, Francesca Annis and James Warwick. So I
Yeah, I'm
thought
a
they
fan
were
of that
brilliant, and
myself.
that's going back to the '80s. You haven't seen them in a while. Um, I liked all the different Marples. Margaret Rutherford, maybe she she's just kind of a bit much for Miss Marple, but I think they've all done fine.
What about I got to ask what you think of Kenneth Branagh's work as Hercule
I
Poirot.
actually have enjoyed them all. I've seen both of them so far, and I can't wait to see The Haunting. And I have enjoyed them. I don't mind little differences from the books and the movie. It's a different interpretation, and I think he made Poirot more of the center of the story than he probably is in the novels. But I think you have to do that for movies.
Yeah,
My only quibble was in the very first one. A fist fight, it's just not. It's not
yeah.
Poirot.
I want to ask you if you can give us maybe 5 fun facts about Agatha Christie.
Well, I have lots of fun facts. Did you all know that her father was American?
No way.
Yes way. So she had the whole connection to the East Coast of the United States.
I did not know that. Wow.
Yeah. She did not drink alcohol. When everyone had a big celebration and stuff, she'd have a nice cup of cream.
Wow. I didn't think that not drinking alcohol was allowed in Britain.
And I just actually read in one of a biography that apparently some teetotaler society was interviewing her, meeting with her at some point, and they annoyed her so much she ordered a beer.
That was enough to drive her to drink right there.
Well, enough to just flick them in the face, because that's kind of who Christie always was. Um, Another interesting one I think is that I did not know. When she was a young woman, that was when they had debutante balls, and
Mhm.
people came out and had a season and were introduced to find eligible young men. And her family at that time had very little money, so her coming out was in Cairo.
Wow.
I know. We think of that as being an exotic destination rather than doing it at home, but it was actually cheaper.
Oh, wow. That's interesting to think that'd be
Isn't
actually
it?
cheaper.
One fun little thing is somebody solved a murder. Was a murder, or there was a poisoning case in England at one point, and somebody was able to solve it by telling their doctor about the Agatha Christie novel The Pale Horse, which includes a thallium poisoning. So
Oh, that's a
she
nasty
actually
poison.
helped to solve a real life mystery.
Oh, wow.
So
That's a
that's
really
pretty
nasty
cool.
poison.
Very nasty. Um, she and her husband Archie, when they did their world tour in 1924, I believe, 1922, she was one of the first Britons to stand up on a surfboard.
No, that's crazy.
Yep.
Oh my
Never mind
God.
a woman, one of the first Britons to actually stand up on a surfboard in Hawaii. Her and her husband were in Hawaii at the time.
That's so crazy to imagine Agatha Christie hanging 10. That's just, it's
I
nuts.
know. Well, everyone thinks of her as an older woman, but in truth, no, she wrote most of her books as, in her 30s and 40s. And so this was her in the 20s, the roaring 20s. She was very much of her age.
So I want to talk about your book, Recipes for Murder.
Yep.
Can you talk about how Agatha Christie used food in her novels and how you decided that you wanted to write a book featuring Agatha Christie food and drinks? that you made a cookbook out of?
So I always wanted to write a book, and have tried to write a mystery many times. And I've never really finished them. I'm not really good at the puzzle part, but I really, as we've discussed here, like food, bit of a foodie and a big Christie fan. So I went looking for an Agatha Christie cookbook one day. Well, there isn't one. And I looked and looked and looked all over the place. And, there's Harry Potter cookbooks, there's Disney character cookbooks, there's Star Wars, there's Game of Thrones, there's Fast and Furious cookbooks. Everybody's, I know, everybody's got a cookbook, but not Agatha Christie. There is a French one. I'm not going to say there's none. There is one in French. And I didn't really wonder why. I just thought, well, what will that look like? And decided just to do it. It was really a labor of love, just an homage to my favorite author. And as I started doing it and working it, I was realizing that there's a lot of food terms that we're unfamiliar with, both because of time and the cultural difference between Britain and North America. So you kind of kept growing that way, like, and how the world changed. I mean, she wrote from, the late teens until the mid 70s. So the world changed a lot. And food was prepared in the early days strictly by servants, and then, by the end it quite a bit different. So I think that's what I started to convey in this cookbook, and I really enjoyed it, putting it really into a time and a space and a setting, so everyone could really understand how all this came to be, understand the culture of Christie and the overall settings of the mysteries themselves.
Her books span a large period of time. Did you get a
Yeah.
sense of, through the food, did you get a sense of the change of things food wise in Britain over a period of time?
Oh, completely. Like, and then don't forget there was war as well, and,
Yeah, yeah.
and depression.
Rationing, yeah.
So food changed, really substantially all the way through. I mean, there's the black market time during World War II and after that, when ingredients were all being traded around. Um, Lobster used to be something the peasants basically ate because it was so
Yep.
plentiful on the Cornwall coast. Nobody ever ate out at a restaurant. What was that? Like, that didn't have, so that was a huge change in society. All sorts of big changes. One recipe I highlight is beetroot and watercress salad. And that's sort of a mid-war thing, because everybody grew, people were trading beetroots, they always grew, it's like potatoes, right? And watercress you can get out of the ditch. So what you could get in your local neighborhood really influenced how Brits ate for years. And then it got really bland for a while, really, sort of post-war, when there was no spices. And yeah, and then new immigrants into the culture and how that changed again. And so, yeah, no, food changed a lot. And whether it was being cooked by cook and maids, or whether it was being made by a housewife, or they're eating at a diner, this food changed a lot. And so in my book, I've divided it into decades, and I've given an introduction to each decade that tells you something about how food was prepared and what was available and in that decade.
You wrote some great instructional um, directions in your recipes, such as how to cook an exquisite omelet, how to roast a leg of lamb properly, how to serve perfectly timed steak frites. Can you talk about how you came to decide to put these instructions in your cookbook?
Well, they kind of go with, if my leg of lamb, which was a clue in the big four, if that's going to be my presentation, and I get from the leg of lamb, we get to talk about Sunday roast and the whole tradition of a Sunday roast meal. Um, there's really not much to it. To cook it, it's like, okay, you do it for this long. So I really had to bump up the instructions and really make sure people got it right. And I'll tell you right now, I learned all those instructions from my mother
Oh,
on the
wow.
Lego plan. Absolutely. An ex-boyfriend is responsible for the omelet. And which was the other one you asked me about?
Steak frites.
Oh, the steak frites. Well, that's that's just learn it yourself. Like it depends how long you want your steak, how well you want it cooked, and the frites, and it can be tricky.
Framing your recipes are some insightful essays and headnotes that detail the history of the recipes and their context in Christie's life and times, and they're also the roles they play in the source works. Can you talk about these essays and what you wanted to impart to the reader from them?
Well, as we were talking a little bit before, right? I want the reader to understand the time in which Christie and all these suspects were living. I mean, so it's part of who understanding their characters as well and their motivations for what they do in the stories becomes much clearer when you understand what everybody's role is and what they're eating and drinking and how they're living. You really begin to get a whole idea, a whole picture of, the closed circle, which is, a key part of Christie Mysteries.
Your book features some extensive research and investigation. What was this research process like for you? As a librarian, I'm always very interested in this aspect of it. Did you go to any special archives or collections to do your research?
I didn't go to anything special. What I did was I looked for old menus.
Oh,
Yeah, hotel menus,
ah.
cruise line menus, railroad menus, things like that, because that showed me what people were eating, what they considered special. This is mostly my 20s and 30s research. So, and a bit of the 40s too. So that really helped because then I could like look at these dishes and then go research what that dish is. And I would find all sorts of different explanations of what they were, which was fun. And I would try them and see which one would work best. And I really had a rule that the recipe I was going to put in a book had to be simple, it had to be available, accessible, and like one page.
Going
So
back
I've
to you,
mostly stuck to that throughout it, but
you didn't have any special collections you worked with at all or anything?
not really. Just my mother's cookbooks, my cookbooks, friends, Google, and whatever I could find at the Metro Toronto Library. So yeah.
The recipes, as you said, are kind of divided into categories per the era.
Hmm.
Um, Now, so steak could be fried in 1923, but marinated and grilled in 1964. Did this make writing the recipes difficult at all?
Well, no, it was really interesting. Like when I found that 1920s recipe for serving, it was, for a tenderloin steak. I mean, it's literally fried in half a cup of butter.
Oh my God.
It's like,
I mean, I imagine it was
I mean,
good.
tastes delicious, but
Yeah.
whoa,
Yeah.
that like was mind-boggling. But then when I started to see steak mentioned, how to cook a steak in like 1940s, now we're starting to talk the fry pan or the grill plat, the flat grill. There's a bit more of that going on. And then the last mention of steak is in the Caribbean. And this is where I talk about it being an outdoor barbecue, charcoal grill and marinating it with peppers and stuff. So how we've treated a steak dinner through the decades did very much one of the markers in the book.
Now, your book has a collection of thematic menus that assemble recipes for a Halloween murder mystery gathering, a Christie
Yeah.
for Christmas gathering, a book club buffet, and other occasions. Can we talk about this a bit, and have you tried these out in your own home?
Oh yeah, for sure. And for my last birthday dinner, we had the Beresfords dinner that's in the book, in the menu that's in the book. We had all three dishes.
Oh, wow.
I think so. And then there's actually a fourth dish for them. Yes, Sunday dinner with the Beresfords. So we had the salmon with the salmon cream, and then we had the kitchen garden casserole, and we had pesh melba for dessert. But there's a fourth Tommy and Tuppence mystery, where the recipe is blackberry jam preserves. And I couldn't really figure that into the menu this way, but when I served it for my friends, I did it with toast bits with goat cheese and the jam. So I got all four of them into the dinner party. So it's just kind of fun. That's all. I just thought, here's another way you can use this book. You can put together a scary meal. You can put together breakfast. You can put together tea or luncheon, celebrate Christie in any way you want.
I am a big fan of Halloween. Can you talk about the Halloween dinner?
What did we put into Halloween? Well, Halloween is my birthday.
Oh, that's so awesome. I would love that with us, my birthday.
It's a fun day to have a birthday. So, well, we started off with a Jolly Roger cocktail because, of course, pirates.
Yeah.
And then jack-o'-lantern deviled eggs. Again, self-explanatory. Then I went with the September roast partridge because it's kind of seasonal, a bit of a hunt thing. I just sort of felt it went with the idea of a Halloween dinner. And then, of course, we have Devon boiled potatoes from And Then There Were None. Is there anything more Halloweeny than everybody dies? And then for dessert, we have another delicious death by cake.
I like that.
Yeah.
That sounds like a lovely Halloween meal. I like that. I may co-opt that myself.
I tell you, this is what we want people to just have some fun with it and look up your favorite book and see if you can put that recipe into a meal one day. And yeah, lots of fun. We've been having a lot. My friends have been, completely immersed being fed Christie type meals for some time now. Usually just one or two items, but yeah, I celebrated my last birthday by doing a complete dinner with the Beresfords.
I want to circle back to Agatha Christie's life a little bit. What
Mhm.
surprised you the most about Agatha Christie when you did your research on her and you read up on her life?
The thing that actually surprised me the most was, like, at one point she owned 8 houses. This woman
Wow.
she really liked real estate. She had great taste. She made great bargains with it. And on top of that, she loved decorating. She loved shopping for decor. She liked picking out the gas fittings. She loved every inch of it. And I've been to Greenway a couple of times now, and she had enough decor to fill all 8 houses, I'm quite sure. She was quite the master of picking up knickknacks from everywhere she went. But yeah, that really surprised me. I did not see that in her personality, that she loved decorating, like making a home. Like she would take 6 months off from doing any books at all just so she could decorate her new home.
Karen, I want to ask you lastly, what's next for you?
I'm not sure if it's 66 cocktails inspired by the work of Agatha Christie, or maybe it's just another 66 dishes. I'm not sure. I'm tossing it around with my editor, which way to go. But I'm certainly going to write one more, I think.
They both sound
It
like
was so
fun.
much fun.
I hope you do. Karen, I want to thank you for being on the podcast, and I really enjoyed getting a chance to talk to you about Agatha Christie and your cookbook. I do want to remind people that we have links to purchase the book. So if you go to the links in the bio, you can find our link for the book that you can purchase through there, and I'm sure it's going to be also at all better bookstores as well. Karen, I want to thank you for being on the podcast, and I want to wish you all the success with your new book.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And thanks for having me. I've enjoyed myself. Good luck on the podcast.
Thank you. That was my conversation with Karen Pierce. Her Agatha Christie inspired cookbook, Recipes for Murder, is out now. You can buy it from the links provided in the bio or through all major book distributors. You can also buy it at all better bookstores. Next week, we'll be talking with Caldecott and Newbery Award winner, author Grace Lin, about her new children's book, Chinese Menu, the history, myths, and legends behind your favorite foods. You can listen to this conversation next week. Until then, I'll see you at the library.